Welcome to Timbisha. Desolate, hot, and yet starkly beautiful. The name comes from the ancient Timbisha Shoshone people, whose descendants still live here today, sometimes barely surviving. It's the hottest place on Earth.
And we're right there next to Highway 190, Bill Boland's house right there. And so we weren't a very pretty sight. And they talked about, the snotty-nosed kids, running around, and I was one of them.
I guess I always considered this place a home. When it got hot, we traveled to different areas where it was cool.
We had lived on the other side of the ranch, on the north side where the museum is. And then later on, we moved down here, or they put us down here.
This is a story of tenacity, a story of the unrelenting struggle by a few Native American elders to save their ancient culture from the forces of greed, government suppression, and tribal apathy. Time is not on their side. When misguided gold seekers stumbled into this valley in 1849, they thought the place was uninhabitable. Surely no one could live here, they said, and referred to it as Death Valley.
The name of Death Valley to us is Timbisha. It's named after that formation that you see in that direction there, and that is the red ochre in there that they used to paint, to brought it down into a paint form that they used very spiritually. It was to protect them, and also they believed that that protects the whole valley.
Pauline, I've known her since I was about 12. I know full well what's happening down here with the Timbishas and with Pauline and them, and their road has been. As Indian people, we have a defined sense of what is right for ourselves and our land and what needs to be done to keep it going around here. It goes without saying that our elders' struggles are definitely to be honored and not forgotten.
The colors of the mountains, like I was saying, in the canyons right now, it's darker shade. And you can tell where the canyon starts and where it goes up and down, and the colors are very beautiful sometimes, especially when it rains. The color seems to come out real distinct, and then I think it's pretty. In fact, that's what I like about this valley. You are surrounded with mountains, and right now it's almost springtime, and that will be when we'll start doing our work on the baskets.
For Maddie is so patient with people, just really patient. She's taught a lot of people how to basket, and she's good with youth, really good. She's raised kids, and they weren't even her kids, and she raised them as if they were her kids, and she put a lot of passion into it and a lot of patience, and it had to be hard, because it shaped her whole life. It changed how she aged and how she moved on with her life. The reward out of it for her is, to this day, they still come back. They still come and see her every week, every day almost.
Getting up and not falling into the wrong crowd. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I turned out the way that I did, is because of my Aunt Maddie. And as well as her cohort, Pauline and Steve's, those two they were a little much together, but I always took pride in the fact that listening to them at night tell stories when we're camping about the old days, leaving here in the summer, going to Wild Rose, and going out to all of our powwow ceremonies, cry dances, harvest dances. And those are the memories that I always cherish as I get older, knowing that, we have 2 women that have been here with the tribe from the get-go that, most people that are my age or even older that are tribal members do not understand what these 2 women truly mean to this tribe.
The youth have lost the ceremonies that would bring them back to their identity. The youth move to the cities for education, for trade school or college. They move to the city for jobs because there are no jobs available. So they find themselves in this dichotomy of violating their own culture.
Pauline is an internationally recognized activist and environmentalist. Maddie is an artist and basket maker, one of the last members of the tribe to carry on this ancient art.
I think it's important to have people do basket work, because it's going to be lost if we don't keep it up, just like our language.
In order to keep the Timbisha culture alive, these stubborn elders have fought the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the U.S. Park Service, and even their own distant tribal council, located in Bishop, California, over 150 miles away.
As a leader of the Timbisha people, the things that I look at and that are important to me is survivability, culture, and heritage. What are we leaving for our future generations to deal with?
Furnace Creek and its life-giving springs have been the sacred ancestral home of the original 13 Timbisha families and their descendants. Beginning in the mid-1800s, the Timbisha people were forced to relocate numerous times and even threatened with total expulsion from their homeland. They never gave in.
I was fortunate enough to just kind of introduce myself to Pauline Estevez, who is extremely well known for the work she's done for her people, and not only that, but her knowledge, her knowledge of history. She had led a lifelong battle for her people, sometimes having some real problems with our government, which I guess a lot of us have every once in a while.
All my life, I learned by experience what the United States government, how powerful they are and what they can do to you. Where did these laws come from anyway? Where is it written up that they can, remove you? After all, we regarded ourselves as part of the land. We are indigenous to our homelands. So that's what happened, but with the Park Service, they didn't want us around here.
So when the Rangers came and decided to flood us out, tear down these homes, well, they tore that one down there. They watered it down. People that wanted to live in there, they had no place. Yeah, they did that to quite a few of these homes. They just tore them down. Yeah, they tried to get rid of us. That's why they put us in the sand. But my gosh, we're not gonna move. We'll just stick it out.
My elder said that, who do they think they are anyway? If they don't want us here, if they don't like us, so why don't they just move somewhere else? And they told us, no hunting, no more bighorn hunting, or don't be getting the rabbits. My mother used to have a little trap line going, for rabbits, and I enjoyed that. Early in the morning, I could hardly wait to go, walk the line, and we'd get our rabbits that way, and we'd share everybody with rabbits, Everybody would have a rabbit to eat. And then we'd go look for some chakawallas up in the mountains, and we gave some away to different people that wanted some. But anyway, sneaking around, for the bighorn sheep, my brother did that, him and his cousins, and they got away with it. Nobody found them.
And they've developed a life cycle where A certain time of the year, they're at a certain place. It's another time of the year, they're at a different place. So it's like a great big cycle. Why they're doing that is that they're going from one resource to the other that's available at a certain time of year. You come down here at a certain time of year, the mesquite beans are just profuse on the trees around here. But it's starting to get warm, and when you're down in that valley and you're talking 120 some degrees, maybe pushing 130 quite frequently, it's not the most idyllic place to stay. So what the Timbisha have done for untold years is they go to altitude where it's cooler and where the pinyon pine trees are, and they gather pinyon nuts, which is one of their staples.
And we'd sneak off up into the mountains to go pick our pine nuts, and the rangers would see our tracks, and they would be looking around for us, and we'd be laying right there underneath a tree, and their old vehicle just passed us by, and we'd laugh, because we never parked our vehicle right where we're going to be picking. We parked it further away. And then we took off into the back country and circled around. Then we see them coming in, and they'd be looking around for us, looking for tracks, Our vehicle's way up there, because we weren't supposed to pick the pine nuts. We weren't supposed to pick the willows either for making baskets and all this kind of stuff. Nothing like that. But 78 came along with a law, the American Religious Freedom Act, for the Indian people, and so then we stood on that, and so then we were allowed to pick some willows and stuff like that with their permission, and my elders, they didn't like that. I didn't either, and we said we don't need that slip of paper. And as my elders are saying, for me to destroy it, and I am going to destroy it. And I ripped it up and threw it away. So that's what happened to us. We were controlled by the Park Service, and we stood our grounds, and we stood on who we were, that we had our own songs, our own language, and everything. We were told to stop having those dances at the middle of the night. This is. Make hooping it up, make a noise, when we're dancing, when my elders are dancing, doing the round dance, that's all Indians do that, friendship dance, whatever you call it, and that's what it was. It was a friendship dance that time, and they had a little feast to begin with, and they started to dance that night, and they said we'll dance till midnight, and the ranching people by that time. They're bringing in tourists and all that, and they could hear us, and that was very disgraceful, and they told the people to stop that.
Over there on the north side of my place here is where they used to have hand games and circle dances. And we had some up here too, quite a while back, I don't know how many years ago, and they had a big circle dance up here.
I guess they used to do that, but right now there's hardly anybody around here to do all those things. Because our members down here in Death Valley is kind of small right now, and we don't have the people to do all those stuff.
You think that'll change soon?
Well, I hope so. If it does, it'll be a much better place for the people.
Yeah, elders. We focus on elders. Elders get birthday money every year. Since we've been getting gaming money, when their birthday comes around, we send them a little piece of it. And everybody who's a member of the tribe gets a birthday card when their birthday is. That month we send them a birthday card. They all get newsletters. The elders get blankets.
Well, Pauline, he says, you got a blanket. I said, what blanket? He said, the Pendleton blanket. And that's supposed to solve the whole thing.
We want them to know that we care about them.
the history of the area. It has a very fascinating geological story. It's an area that's extremely complicated. It's not what I would say like the Grand Canyon area. This area was on an ancient continent, pulled apart underneath an ocean for close to 1 billion years. Then the landmass rose out of the ocean again around the time of the age of the dinosaurs. And the area was very mountainous. And as time progressed, the mountains eroded and became a plain area. And actually the area looked like an old savanna like you would see in Africa. Then about 15 million years ago, this area went through something called extension, with the whole Great Basin is going through this. It's just being pulled apart. The whole state of Nevada and parts around the surrounding states are being pulled apart. And what you have is you have ranges rising and basins dropping. So when you come here to Death Valley and you see the mountains here, you'll notice the mountains are tilted and you'll see a lot of different layers in there. So you see very old rocks that are exposed because of that extension. The interesting thing about this area here, like I say, it's not just the geology, but it's also the climate. And now people think of it as being just a hot, dry place. Most people I run into think it's just a whole big sand pile. This area is not just one sand dune after another. We have elevation at 282 feet below sea level at Badwater and going up over 10,000 feet at Telescope Peak.
Sacred legends and mystical stories have been passed along by the Timbisha and all Western Shoshone people since the beginning of time.
So for people who aren't accustomed to hearing Shoshone stories, most of them are creation stories or of how things are.
There is a legend of this place here, accordingly to my people, and it's not Yubihibi Crater, it's Wosa, and Wosa is the name of a burden basket. There's some sensitive parts to this legend, and I have been told that I do not, go into detail over it. It's very hard for me to do it anyway in the English language. It's much better in our own language. Nona ite win, so se vanda naika Wosa na rubinya handa sede. Sede mo se vabide kasu wo Yubihibi Crater ma rubinya sede mo. Keshmi rubinya handa sede. Ubuete amo sunada raipu amo. Usuwa brano na rubinya Wosa. And it's cold, so he builds a little fire and then lays down, trying to warm his back. And he's laying there, and the basket catches on fire, and all the people then ran away and went into the different areas, up into the different canyons in all 4 directions. Then he finds out that his basket is on fire, burning his back. So he gets up and he hollers, and the people all, he's trying to tell the people to come back, but they're not going to do that. They just ran in all directions. So he threw the basket off of his back, the basket that was burning, and his back is kind of burnt a little bit. And he sees a pool of water. I guess it had rained, he says, and left a pool of water there. So he puts his back down into the water, and then he hears a noise, and there's a sizzling noise and some stuff going up into the air. So then he runs away from it, and then he sees all this, the ground moving up into the air, and a lot of things flying around, rocks and dirt and all this. And so he runs away from it. Then he runs a short distance to the west, and then he looks then back there, and there's a big hole there. And so then he named that hole then Wosa.
Coyote dies at the end of the story, but lives again in many other legends as a jester and troublemaker. He is much revered by the Timbisha. Native American stories can be abstract with subtle meanings, and are often misunderstood by other cultures. Some 19th and early 20th century writers and historians described the Timbisha people in negative ways and were at best paternalistic. Far too often, published descriptions of the Timbisha were slanderous lies. This magazine article in an early Auto Club publication is full of deplorable myths and exaggerations about the early Panamint Indians, or Timbisha. They were described as being similar to the anthropoid ape when first seen by white men. More beastly than beasts, miserable, worthless creatures, and to avoid starvation, they will eat dead bodies or even kill their children for food. The intent of this disgusting bit of journalism was to give credit to white civilization for improving the cultural status of the Timbisha. For more than a century, damaging misinformation like this reinforced negative opinions about Native American cultures everywhere. The prevailing notion of many whites was that Native Americans were mostly debased savages and must be taught to be like white people and fit into white civilization. Along with other living elders, Pauline is directly linked to the history of the Timbisha people. As a child in the early 1930s, she lived with her family in the traditional way near the springs of Furnace Creek Ranch.
Having a person who has lived that history and lived through the really hard times, they didn't have, modern living facilities.
So I was born right here in the valley in Furnace Creek, where the post office is located. What I remember is that the moving of us, due to the encroachment of these miners there, they needed space, so they told us to move up Furnace Creek, and there was a creek that was man-made, going down into a pond that the Indian people had built themselves. In history, it's written up in some history writings, that a natural oasis they found. It wasn't a natural oasis. It was built by my grandfather's people to be used for the wildlife, attracting migrating birds, so they could use it for food, and like ducks, that passes on through the valley. And this one was to hold a reservoir where they was going to have a sort of like a community garden site there. And they did grow things there. It was abundant with the growth of the arrowweed, which people used for shelter. And they threw water over it. Since they were living there right by the stream, they had an abundant source of water. And watered down the floor, within the shelter to harden the ground. And this it hardened up where you could actually sweep it, and then to throw water on those bundled up arrowweed that made their shelters. It was constructed with them, and they became saturated with water. So in the summer months is when they did this, so it would be cool inside of the shelter. So they left the little babies in there, and the little guys and the old people, where they could stay cool. But I forget how many years we lived up there in the creek. And finally we was told to move again. So we moved where the visitor center is now located. And I forget what year it was, but I think I started school from there. And there was a little school there, one-room school, and of course we was told, when we were in grammar school, not to speak our own language, to start speaking English. So 1936 came along. By that time I'm about 11 years old. And so we were told then to move. Some people, said we're not going to move. It says, we've been moved before, we're not going to move anymore. They said they were going to build us some homes down here. And what they built was these homes, and a lot of the people, didn't like it because they said we weren't meant to live in mud. This is mud, dried up mud. We never used mud to live in before. We never knew, that the Park Service really wanted us out of here. They never told us that they never told my people that they had a policy that there was supposed to be no Indians, no reservations, living within within the national parks or national monuments.
As difficult as Pauline's early schooling was, life soon became unbearable for her younger brother Ed and thousands of Native American children across the country when the Bureau of Indian Affairs began rounding them up and sending them away to Indian boarding schools. They were forced to abandon their native culture, language, and spiritual beliefs to become, quote, civilized.
And Stewart Indian School was, it was not a very pleasant place. The idea was to have the young Indians disassociate themselves from their culture. They would not be allowed to speak their language. They would not be allowed to sing their songs. They would not be allowed to dance. They marched from place to place. It was like, like being in boot camp. Not very pleasant. I remember my friend George Ross and Pauline's brother, Ed, when they were young men, they had to go up to, they forcibly had to go up to Stewart Indian School. Well, my friend George, he's Southern Paiute, he escaped one time and they caught him after a while. He was up in north of here working on a horse ranch. And so then later on, Ed Estevez, Pauline's brother, and George, they escaped again. Fortunately for those two guys, they got away this time. Probably the worst thing that happened to the Native Americans in this area is when some people on a wagon train, they were lost. They had split off another wagon train and they came stumbling into Death Valley. And they stumbled around and finally got out of here. Unfortunately, they brought back tales of having found silver and gold. Right after that, here came the miners and here came the prospectors.
My name is Emmett Harder. I started to prowl Death Valley when I was 14. I'm probably one of the few people that you'll run into that actually was a Death Valley single jackass prospector. I'm amazed that our history we hear about Death Valley now doesn't really portray what happened there with the white man and the Indians. From the 1850s on, the Indians were part of the whole Death Valley story of what was happening there. They worked with the borax companies, they worked with the miners. The matriarch of the tribe was Pauline Estes, and she told me that her father drove a stagecoach from the Skidoo area down through Wild Rose Canyon. And her father worked on the building of the resort at Furnace Creek. And also, the whole tribe worked on the building of Scotty's famous castle.
For centuries, Timbisha basket makers have gathered and used various native plants like bulrush to create the intricate designs found in their unique baskets. By the early 20th century, Steinadach and a few other talented Timbisha artists were transforming their craft into a true art form. Their work was sought after by tourists and collectors worldwide and provided much-needed income to Timbisha families.
Basketry is handed down to, people, the generation after generation, and they made certain kind of basket to cook in, to bring water home in those water baskets. And there's a basket they call winnowing baskets, which used to separate seeds from little rocks or little sticks. And then they made baskets too, to sell to people. At that one time, they were doing that just so they would get enough money to buy whatever they needed. Well, I was teaching 3 of the girls here. Oh gosh, I'd say about 3 years ago.
Okay, well, let's. You've got some baskets to show us. Why don't you show us some baskets?
It's a sample basket. As you can see, it's got different colors in here. The bottom is devil's claw. The black is devil claw, and it's kind of orangish, and the brownish color is Junkus. I forgot to tell you, my grandmother's name was Dinah Dog, and this was her basket that she made in the early 50s.
We have the photo of her there.
And where'd you get that one from?
Well, it's part of what was called the Kirk collection.
Oh, it's Ruth Kirk. She's the one that...
I remember her sitting down and doing this, because I used to watch her.
We have the responsibility of taking care of their families' baskets, their families' cultural materials. And it is willow. Right?
Yeah, you have to keep it wet, otherwise it's gonna break.
Oh,
For the Timbisha, basket making is a long, involved process. Starting in late fall or early winter, they search for the perfect strong limber willow to harvest. Next, they carefully strip off the bark and size the willow branches into what they call wefts. They are then stored away until spring, when it is warmer and they can start the weaving process.
I don't know if it's gonna be good enough. These are the small ones that we use to get started.
Whoops, broke that one. Right at that weak spot. It's kind of fun in a way, but you can get pretty tired of it too. Like right now, I'm getting pretty tired.
Boy, our fingers gonna be sore tomorrow.
Oh, they are?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a twiner. I found that out. I start off so good and I'm just going along real good. Oh boy, I'm thinking I've got the hang of this. Before I know it, I lose it.
And then as soon as I get things straightened out, I'm going to start teaching again. Because some of the ladies, they still got their baskets, they're not even finished. So they're hoping that maybe we'll finish it this year or so.
Pauline's worldview and activism developed early as she became aware of the mistreatment of all indigenous people in the environment.
The Europeans, with their way of life, they interfered with our culture. And during my school years, it was always, doing essays on the environment and the Native Americans. When you talk about the environment, you are talking about Native Americans' concerns and their way of life.
Whenever I've talked to some Indian people, it's almost impossible to answer because they can't separate their culture and their spirituality from the environment. So if you ask a question about an environment, you come up with all these spiritual and cultural things because they're together.
The whole ecosystem, in other words. And when you talk about indigenous people, we are indigenous to this continent here, and then also we recognize other indigenous peoples.
Pauline's concerns grew stronger when she saw the mistreatment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
The Japanese people, how they was, all put into what I call concentration camps throughout the different states. I thought that was all, prejudiced actions just because the American people was at war with Japan.
In 1974, the Bureau of Land Management charged two Western Shoshone ranchers, Carrie and Mary Dan, with illegally grazing their cattle and horses on public land. According to the Ruby Valley Treaty of 1863, the Western Shoshone never agreed to give up their lands.
Because we had the treaty which protected our lands. This is what they thought, that they never ceded their lands or their rights. And the treaty never does talk about, that they have lost their land rights or not. We just gave them the right of passage.
Soon, the Western Shoshone National Council stepped in to help.
We had to protect it from the BLM and part of the Forest Service. They were taking the cattle, rounding them up and taking them to Reno. They were telling the dance sisters they were overgrazing and owe them lots of money.
Pauline was outraged. The BLM's action against the dance sisters sparked a fire of activism within her. She became a member of the Western Shoshone National Council and fought for many Shoshone causes. Pauline went on to become a highly respected international activist.
When she spoke out from her heart to the people, and she was a real good speaker. She spoke out for what she believed in.
And I acted, on behalf of the Native Americans, not only just for my own people, but I was thinking very worldly, and that is the way that I was taught to believe in. That type of thinking of the environment and the Native Americans, that has always been me, that I was born into it.
It all goes back to our grandparents. They're the ones who had the struggles. All these people who were out there fighting the good fight on behalf of the Shoshone Nation for our rights, our land, our water. They went through a lot.
So anyway, I started to give presentations on the destruction of the lands, and then furthering the activism, me and some other speakers, indigenous people, would travel together and to give our presentations against the nuclear weapons testing, and went abroad into to different countries, into Europe, all over. All the other countries was present there, but not the United States.
The Timbisha people were exposed to the extremely dangerous effects of A-bomb testing at the Nevada test site.
We found out about the atom bomb. We could see it, being tested over here nearby in Nevada. Living over here, we could see all the lights. We could feel the tremors, and we could almost hear it go off.
They were never warned. They were never told. It was, we'll do a test. Well, what's a test? But they weren't told what it was. And she describes these beautiful clouds, and she describes the explosion so loud, and several people do, that the buildings would shake. And then the mothers and daughters would say, go outside, because they would think that the building was going to fall down. So they would go out.
I really strongly believe that throughout those years, the nuclear testing and all that it did bring about a lot of illness, a lot of conditions, such as cancer and all that. At that time, cancer was almost unknown. And now it's become #1 issue when it comes to the health conditions of people.
People that lost children, babies that, one person lost like 3 children under the age of 8. I mean, there weren't any fences around the test site, so the wild animals would walk on and off, and they weren't thinking that, Indian people were still using them, folks. And then I was at one BLM meeting, and a guy said, well, it was only mountain sheep. Nobody eats those. And like every Indian person in the room was like, yeah, we do. They talked about the smelling this deer coming down the valley. I mean, from quite a distance. I can only assume the boils, the what had happened to their skin.
And it appeared that he was all full of antlers. There was too many sticking out of his skull. And then later on, I found out that he had escaped from the herd that was over there in Nevada test site.
There were so many stories about stuff like that. And what was really appalling was that nobody ever told them. Nobody ever told them.
In the 1980s, Pauline and a few other Native American activists began a monumental effort to win legal recognition for the Timbisha people in the U.S. Congress.
When the land base began to be worked on, it was the Homeland Act that was being worked on by by Pauline, who was now the elder, and then, you know, with Matty Steves and Grace Goad, and also Barbara Durham and Richard Bolin were all involved.
After we educated them as to who we were, then they finally decided they'll sit at the table with us and talk, nation to nation.
We just got tired of being moved to different areas and people saying, oh, we're going to lose our place,
In the year 2000, the Timbersoni Homeland Act was signed by President Bill Clinton, which was monumental because it recognized over 7,000 acres of land that was also put into trust for the Timbisha Shoshone for their use, for our use.
Park Service was very reluctant at the time. They said we would never get any lands within the park or even outside of the park. But we succeeded in doing that.
Things were looking up in 2000. I mean, we started moving forward with, doing some of the things that we had planned in the Act. One was the community building that we're in right now, and the offices next door. And so, it'd be good to be able to tell the stories about Timbisha and what, what Timbisha means and what it means to us as a people.
How come the tribe hasn't improved after?
They haven't improved, like with housing, or any kind of for economic development so people can have jobs. And we're supposed to have a little motel going, and then a little visitor center, where people can go in and ask questions about the tribe and about the valley and all this kind of stuff. After all that fighting we did and doing all the groundwork with the federal government, trying to persuade them, who we were and what we want and what is needed down there. And we got it. And what have we done with it? Nothing. The famous to me, was a bad idea. I was totally against it. I tried to talk to the council, tell them, no, they're no good. They're flimsy. They're just temporary uses, and are they going to be just temporary homes for the people, And they said, no, it's going to be their home. And
this behind us right here is one of our new FEMA trailers that we've had here for the last probably 5.5 years, and they just finally got put into place and set on a brick foundation so everybody can get into them.
We're not told, firsthand about what's going on with these, and nothing appears even in the newsletters, about in details, about those things. So we don't get much information from that bishop office.
Not even from the housing. I haven't heard a thing from the housing.
Neither have I.
You have to put in another application. So how many applications do a person have to have before they get a home? And all these homes are just sitting here. What's happening to them? They're just coming apart.
Let's take a look at the Sun Lodge plans for Death Valley. I think you'll find these fascinating.
This is a rendering of what it would look like looking out from the hotel, and you'll note that there are flowers, and there are people that come from around the world to see these flowers in the springtime. And what you don't know about these renderings that I'm going to tell you is that this is what you would actually see if you were looking out the windows on this rendering. We don't know if we're going to use this particular design. These were initial renderings to give us an idea of what it could look like and the architectural design that might fit in our area and not stick out.
Let me ask you one thing. How does this relate to Steve Casper's plans?
This is Steve's idea right here, and we're working with Steve, and I appreciate Steve's what would I call it? Tenacity.
My name's Steve Casper. I've been coming here to Death Valley for over 20 years, first as a freelance photojournalist, and then decided I really loved this place. There was something very special about the light, the fact that it was just wide open space, very few people here. So decided to start a guiding business and do guided tours here. But there's a certain percentage of my clientele that don't want to camp, so I decided to try to develop some motel-based, lodge-based trips here in Death Valley. Because the only options for us to do lodge-based trips are the two developed facilities here in Death Valley, Stovepipe Wells and Furnace Creek, and those are run by corporations, and the money that we spend there goes to those corporations and not to the tribe, and it just didn't seem quite fair. So I got talking to people here, and the idea was to build something here. So I decided to just kind of drive into the village one day and see if the tribe was interested in doing something with me and my tours. So that's how I got to know Pauline. And the first idea was a relatively large-scale lodge out there in the corner of the trust lands, out there on the alluvial fan with a view of this. So basically surrounded by the national park. And there would be isolated little cabins, so you would feel like you were camping out in the wilderness, but you would have a nice hotel to stay at. And it would be out there away from the village, half a mile out, and it would be environmentally engineered, low profile, solar powered. That project is on hold now because control of the trust lands is now in the hands of the Bishop Council, not the people that actually live here in the village. So now we have to try to do something different because we can no longer build it out there. That's the general status right now. The information Joe suggested using his dad's plot right here in the village as a memorial to his dad, and using that empty lot that's now empty, and using that for a much more modest lodge right here for just my small groups, and then other groups like mine.
What you're talking about is still within the trust lands, and he will be involved.
That's what I've been saying to Joe, but Joe said Jeff, who's the lawyer, Jeff's going to look at the proposal, which they have now. They thought a private plot would be legally treated differently, and we could maybe do this nonprofit and do what we all want to do and keep the money here for you guys in the village, and that was the idea. That's kind of where it stands right now.
So our vision right here in the village is to get people to move back. So we're going to build that green hotel, and after we do that, we're going to take the funds from that hotel. We're going to build normal size streets, the normal width. And we're going to have sidewalks, we're going to have curbs, we're going to have trees, we're going to have a swimming pool. We're going to build a covered swimming pool to reduce evaporation and to put fires out. We're going to have our fire lines tied to that swimming pool, so if there's a fire, you can hit those pumps and that swimming pool will put somebody's fire out if it has to. We're going to build a green park and use all the water that's available to us for greenery.
In the plans to rebuild the village, Pauline and Maddie feel that essential cultural and environmental considerations have been totally ignored by George Goldson and the Bishop Council.
Like they say, they want lawns and trees. I mean, lawns mostly, and fences. I don't think that's right.
You know, we have tribal members that have no idea what these two women have done. So how can you call yourself Timbisha when you've never even been to our homeland, our hunting grounds, our camping sites, anything like that? The time comes, those are going to be the biggest things that are going to be missed. That once they're gone without these stories, it's gone. Who's going to be here to carry on the legacy? Who's going to be here to stand up for this community?
You know, I never gave it a thought, you know, what it is to become an elder in the future when I was younger. I just did what was necessary and just kept on going and tried to focus on the future.
Yeah, some of them, they're not interested. Like in the basket, I had tried to ask about 3 of the children that was here, and they said, yeah, we'll do that. And then they never showed up.
I think that's, you know, a big travesty as far as, you know, what we should stand for as a tribe, because they are traditionalists and they do believe in the old ways, and I think that's an art that we're losing every day.
There seems to be a disconnect between the traditional people and the Shoshone youth. There's all the social pressure to go out, and I think it's basically a loss of identity. And now this whole acculturation of these kids. You know, they have to live in both worlds. What is that? Oh my gosh, I mean, they can't just live here.
This community has a lot of tragedy within it, a lot. When I first started, people drank here heavily. I mean, there was always a big party going on. There was always somewhere somebody was partying, especially as the weather got warmer. They were out. I mean, and I knew they were partying, and you know, being an old partier myself, growing up, you know, it's just part of their lifestyle. It was. It's not now. It's pretty good that out of all the youth that were here, that only one ended up in prison.
We're the result of years of Americanism, and it's a battle. When you're growing up in the city and where I was at, you didn't have this. You just had to school every day, see everything else, all these other influences, and none of them are Indian.
Do you think young Timbisha tribal members are concerned that once the elders pass on, that information, that knowledge, that culture is going to be gone?
Yeah, I think so. Some don't want any part of it. Young people just don't get taught as much as the elders been taught.
None of the Timbisha youth living in the village were willing to be interviewed.
Young people, you know, they just, some will recognize, you know, the authority of the elders, because we are to be we're the ones that has that wisdom. And some will rebel against it, you know, they'll say, oh, she don't know what she's talking about, that old lady, you know.
Not all is lost for the tenacious elders. There are still some important cultural activities that continue, some ancient, some quite new. Each year when the invasion of the early white settlers is celebrated at Furnace Creek, the Timbisha make a tidy profit by selling the hungry 49ers spicy Indian tacos.
Pick up that tomato that's on the floor.
Good, you ran out of my bag.
Go ahead, Paulie, give me that sour look. So is each one of those will be a taco?
It'll be $7. After all the goodies are free.
Oh, I know. I can tell with all this. The smells are so good.
A lot of people selling them for $8, $9, $10, as one woman did.
So the dough sits over here to rise a little bit, divide it up.
Just use your eyes.
Is the steam coming out of it?
Okay, $7. You gotta have Indian hands.
They were here first, right?
Right.
Yeah. It is their land.
Yes. And
Yes,
they
it
keep
is.
getting shoved around.
They did. I know it.
Yeah.
It was just not fair, but like they say, there's a higher power.
So what do you think the day is going to bring?
Today we should be up in the mountains. I'm hearing the pine nuts are burning out.
Our sacred food is the pine nut, and it's called duva in our language. And that was our main staple of life for thousands of years.
What do you want to do, Pauline? What do you want to do?
Well, Miss in, George?
Yeah, another hour. It's almost 12:30 now. But over there on top of the trees, they got the nice big ones. Can you get those? couple hours, right? That we did this morning.
Nice cones. Those are really nice sized ones.
Let's do it.
Okay, all of it?
Yeah. All right.
The belief is that your pine nuts will be better. They'll come out of the cone, real easily. It won't be so tight up against the cone. That's a tradition.
No, that isn't it.
Probably more to it than that, but that's what I was told.
So don't drink water while you're cooking them, while you're roasting them. Okay.
Okay, stick it down in there. You see?
Down in where? Down there?
Right in there,
Good job, Pauline. God.
I know.
Get out of the way.
You can catch on fire.
It's
Get in. Oh, you guys see? Am I on fire?
No. We'd be putting you out.
Okay.
And down to the sagebrush. Flip it over.
And
You guys getting dry?
We believe that every living thing on this earth has a life and spirit of its own. And you can't just take it. You have to stop, pray for the thing you're going to take, and leave an offering if you can. And so whenever we get done, we pray for the pine nuts to come for the next season. Maybe that they'll be in this area, or they'll be in the next area, but that they'll always be nice and big.
Okay, now we can eat it.
Now you could eat and drink.
And, they'll have yoo-hoo in them and make them good.
And in the good old days, when we had, jerky cooked up on the trees, and this little fire they would build up, and that's for you to cook on.
Really?
Wow.
This is the best way. They taste good and they're already cooked. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Because this is the way you're supposed to do it.
not in the microwave.
No, his boyfriend, his mom cooks it in the microwave too.
Right, and I never heard of that before.
Uh-huh.
City people.
Like the beat of your heart, Mother Earth sends out a healing tone that hits your body and soul. It moves around inside of you. It has to be in the flow of life. Everything has to come full circle. My grandfather is Raymond Yell. He's been involved with happenings that have been down this way for many years. I'm in a sense following in his footsteps, going to these gatherings and figuring things out for myself and seeing the elders that have been around here. Right now we're in a sacred healing place founded by Corbin Harney, which I met him when I was about 15 years old. This place is called Puhava, magic water or doctor water. The place is healing. And that's important to Shoshone people because water is a very sacred part of our life. As Indian people, we have a defined sense of what is right for ourselves and our land and what needs to be done to keep it going around here. It goes without saying that our elders' struggles are definitely to be honored and not forgotten. And so I know full well what's happening down here with the Timbishas and what Pauline and them and their road has been. I can honestly say that maybe as a Shoshone youth, respect for the elders and everything they've had and their teachings is pivotal. So today, I do my best to sing our songs and dance. And this I would recommend for, all my Shoshone brethren and my peers, younger kids, to come here and they'll understand what it is to be out here, to wake up every morning, and dance and sing and pray and watch our sun come up over the mountain and give thanks for another day of life. So here at Buhaba, you know, I was asked if I could come down and, you know, share my knowledge of making drums with the people. And that was no problem. I had some elk hide laying around that I could use, so I brought it down and we made drums. Of course, traditionally drums weren't Shoshone's people thing. They had come around later, but the message that a drum gives to people is important, because I was told when I was a little kid that the drum represents our heartbeat. And every beat you do, whether the fast pace, what you're going, your heart's going, or the slow beating, calm, gentleness, that your heart is going with it. And those tones that a drum sends out are healing tones that go to your body and reverberate through your body, because everything on Mother Earth vibrates at a certain tone. That healing tone goes out to all around us, and through the, you know, our prayers go with it, and we are able to send those tones everywhere else. And that's what we do when we drum, is we have everything in mind that we're singing about, and it goes to them. And in the morning circle, you know, that's a very important part of Shoshone life, because we have to honor our son for giving us another day of life on earth. And we get up there and we sing our songs, we dance, we pray, we offer our prayers that go up, and to everywhere we send our prayers to. And for every little plant and animal, wind, the earth, in that center where we dance, or that's the healing spot where our energy is conveyed throughout the land. That's our morning way of life every day. And we do that here at Puhaba in most of our traditional gatherings.
I've been coming here for many years, ever since it was formed by the late Corbin Harney. And I supported his cause all the way. We started up from scratch with the help of a bunch of people, mainly activists, you know, different organizations that believed in Mother Earth and all of Mother Earth's belongings.
After the historic signing of the Timbisha Homeland Act in 2000, Pauline and the other courageous elders attempted to begin rebuilding a vital Timbisha community in their Death Valley homeland. But they were stopped in their tracks by Bureau of Indian Affairs mismanagement, Timbisha Council infighting, and the apathy of tribal members.
There's a lot of things that have happened over the years, and it's not any one council or any one group of people. It's a conglomeration of people that I don't think they intentionally did it. I think they just did not understand how we have to function.
I don't trust nobody up there in Bishop at all anymore. That's a sad position for me to be in, very sad. And so that's how it affects me.
Sure, well, it's a double then, because on one hand you're saying we don't help you, and on the other hand you're saying, well, I'm not going to call you guys anymore. So what is it that you want? Either you want your help, our help, so you're going to call us.
It isn't me.
Or you don't want our help.
Okay, it's the tribe. It's not me. It's the whole village here. You know, they talk about it, and some will say, well, we can't do nothing about it. Well, I try to do something about it. Several other people try to do something about it. Like we said, if we could get a hold of that truck, maybe we could go pick up this junk ourselves. You know, they're not going to do it, because it's been proven to us. And then the work crew that's supposed to come down here and work on these old FEMAs, how many work crews have arrived here in the past? Not one.
None. Yeah, I agree with you on that. You claim that we don't do anything, but then when we try...
Well, where is it then? Give it to us in writing?
We try to do stuff and you stop it. We don't want that. We'll look like traitors if we take it from the bishop office. Well, what? This is the tribe.
Who are you quoting?
I hear it all the time from different people in the office.
You close your ears to those and do your business. It's the whole system. We fall under them.
Yes,
the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And they want us that way.
You're absolutely right. They want us under control. They want to keep us just barely alive.
Disputes within the tribe, like the one between former and current tribal chairman Joe Kennedy and George Goldson, have disrupted any real progress.
I have tried to talk to Mr. Kennedy a dozen times. He came to our office. Bill and I sat down with him. We tried to talk to him. We tried to negotiate. We tried a peaceful ending. He would have nothing to do with it. We have tried many times. He will not budge from his position. It's not like we haven't tried.
Not after all the dirty stuff that was passed on.
They started this smear campaign and sent out postcards and said I had taken all this money and I had traveled the world. And they had postcards of some little kids saying liar, liar, and flipping off everybody. And I said, oh my gosh.
I didn't agree with it. I didn't approve it. I didn't know who did it. To this date, I can honestly tell you, I do not know who did that. But I can't do battle on both fronts. Either I do battle that's going on within the tribe, or I do battle that I have to do with the BIA. Now we need to decide, where is that battle going to benefit us the most? That battle is going to benefit us the most if we're unified, and I'm against the BIA, and I'm against the IHS, and I'm against all these other agencies that are taking things away from us. You know, HUD is going to lose 5%. That means we lose 5%. We lose money every year because we can't get our act together.
That's the whole thing. And where did it start? This is the reason why I said we should have just remained, you know, a bunch of renegades down here. At least we would have been happy.
Like so many other Native Americans, some Timbisha have had to leave their homeland because of a lack of jobs and decent housing. As a result, too many have lost touch with their ancient culture and beliefs. They're losing what it means to be Timbisha.
People that lives in Bishop, urban Indians, urbans. It's because they don't live on their own trust lands. They live in town. They live on somebody else's reservations. Okay?
We tried to give them FEMA
urban
trailers.
Indians.
Yep.
And they seem to think that they're qualified with everything that we were qualified for. But they're not. They're urban Indians.
Yep. I will admit that I'm an urban Indian. I'm not in touch with what you guys are in touch with. We want more people to live here. But how do we get more people to live here? We have FEMA trailers that are set up. That one's empty.
Look at the condition they're in.
Yeah, I understand.
They don't have any coolers in there. How are people going to live? Sometimes it's just a comedy. What's happening to everyone? It is, because it's so ridiculous.
Well, I like it because, you know, everything's my fault. It's everything in the newspaper. Oh, Golson this, Golson that. And
well, you guys up there, Kennedy this, Kennedy that. What's the difference?
Yeah, well, I guess.
So Kennedy this and
right.
Golson this. When are they ever going to come together and talk about this thing? If you guys are interested in the tribe's future at all, do something.
Joe Kennedy and George Goldson are still not speaking.
Jordan, Jordan, would you like to learn how to speak our language?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I ever wanted to do, was to teach the language. Just like you teach basketry, you know. But the language is the root of everything, because our words, you know, pertains to the land, and all that is natural.
That's all it needs.
That's all it needs.
You need somebody that's interested to teaching and the people that wants to learn.
It's going to be lost for, you know, after this generation goes.
Yep, our generation.
Then the next generation.
It's going to be lost.
Like I've always said, that what I do, you know, the work I've done for the tribe is all for the future. Because that's what we were taught, to look into the future.
Our way of life is a shadow among the mainstream of the world. It's the struggles of our grandparents and the struggles of our ancestors. They have to be in the flow of life. The things that they've done is something to look back on and just be astonished with, because they were out there fighting for our rights. Everything has to come full circle at some point.
To this day, the Bureau of Indian Affairs continues to hinder any progress to reestablish the ancient Timbisha culture.